Rolling.
Okay. Dr. Glenn Caldwell,
Yes, sir.
you have a rich history with Gospel Goes Classical and a unique perspective on the brand. You were an orchestral arranger at the very first presentation in 2003 with Dr. Henry Panion. From there, you became the creative director of Gospel Goes Classical, and in addition to that, you're conducting tonight's performance. How have you seen the brand evolve?
Well, oddly enough, I see the brand almost the same. Maybe some of the faces have changed. I remember the first concert and how great everybody felt about that. And if it works, my thinking is you don't have to fix it, if it's not broken. But it's evolved, if we want to consider an evolution, at least in the sense that we appear to be more aggressive in searching out new opportunities to have Gospel Goes Classical performed in different places. And that's probably it, as far as my take on it. And we've also evolved in the sense that we have to consider maybe some policies and procedures for the people who we approach and who approach us to do a concert. In other words, I think we're a little more organized from the standpoint of public relations in preparation for a concert. To talk to prospective clients, that kind of thing. But as far as the quality of the music, it was great then. The concept was rather fresh, and so we're just trying to maintain that.
As a conductor, from the vantage point of the conductor, has that changed your perspective on Gospel Goes Classical?
Well, it's a lot more work. It's different when you just have to do the arranging and let someone else do the conducting. But the perspective is almost the same. I think it's better in the sense that if I arrange it, if I have the opportunity to conduct it, then there are certain things that I can push the orchestra to bring out. Whereas if you give it to someone who really only listens to classical music and don't listen to gospel and don't listen to these recordings on the radio or CDs, that there are certain emotional parts of the song that they may not bring out. So someone who has their hand in both, a little classical, a little gospel, then they can push the orchestra members to bring out certain things that may bring about more of an emotional effect.
Now, the merging of gospel and classical art forms has a rich history dating back to the early part of the last century. Historically, is Gospel Goes Classical emblematic of the merging of those art forms?
It is a continuation of it, except maybe with a different flavor. In the late part of the 19th century, there was a Czechoslovakian composer named Antonín Dvořák who came to this country, and he was highly respected as a European composer in this country. But he told American composers, "Hey, look, use spirituals, use Native American melodies as themes within your own symphonies and art songs." And there were a number of composers who paid attention to it. And one black composer by the name of William Grant Still sort of bought onto that. And I think this is something that he was going to do anyway. So the first symphony that he wrote was called the Afro-American Symphony, and he actually uses the blues, in the first movement. So the concept of using black musical traits and black musical forms in a symphonic setting has really been around since the end of the 19th century, going into the beginning decades of the 20th century.
So where do you see it developing from this point forward?
Well, there's no telling. It kind of depends on what kind of gospel tunes come out. My role has been to take something that's already there and then sort of convert it into more of a classical setting. If there's rap and gospel, and of course there is, then we can do that. We can do what anyone wants to do. Up to this point, when I've been approached about doing orchestrations, the question always pops up: can you orchestrate it? And up to this point, there's been nothing to say I can't. And with classical-oriented instruments, and my thinking is that if there's a melody in it, there's something I can do with it.
And final question, what do you like best about Gospel Goes Classical?
I think it's the concept of actively pursuing the mixing of the two. Because what happens is not just our hearing gospel being played with some of these classically oriented instruments, it's also about the people who are playing these instruments. Because I can tell you, some of these folks have never been in a black church, and to hear them or to watch them react to the choir when there's emotional outbursts, you know, that's new. And for them also to play rhythms that they're not accustomed to playing, even though they play some complicated music, you know, just from a classical vein. A lot of black music has syncopation and a lot of offbeat patterns. And there are a lot of classical players who have to get used to that. You know, they're not accustomed to it. They can practice it and they'll eventually get it, but it's not something that they're accustomed to sing. So the merging of the music is one thing. The merging of the actual people, the black and the white or whoever is playing, you know, the classically oriented instrument, they have to realign their thinking. They have to make some adjustments. We have Jewish people in there, you know, and folks of other cultures who just never been in a black church. So for them to play this music and to play it the way we want it played is a good experience for them, and they'll tell you that. They'll tell you that they love it and wish that they did more of it.
Well, Dr. Caldwell, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Allen.